Now that The Rise of Skywalker has come and gone, it seems like the perfect time to look back at the past 5 years of Star Wars content that's been released under Disney. Since we're not getting another movie for almost 3 years, and since Episode 9 finished the story of the Skywalkers, it seems like the end of an era, and I'm calling that unofficially Phase 1 of Star Wars Disney. Over the next week, I'm going to look back at all of the stories and various media that's come out over the past 5 years, discuss the pros and cons of each, and offer up my hopes for what's to come next in Phase 2 and beyond. And today, I'm looking at the Star Wars movies. We got 5 films in the past 5 years: The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, Solo, A Star Wars Story, and The Rise of Skywalker. Personally, I liked 4 out of 5 of them. I still have some issues with The Rise of Skywalker. I think that the more it sits with me, the more I'm going to come around on it. And already, I'm at a point where, I appreciate it for the things that it did give me that I really loved, and I'm able to set aside some of those things that didn't quite sit well with me. But I said back in 2015 when I first started this channel that the simple fact that we're getting more Star Wars movies, more than we've ever had before, means that on occasion there's going to be a movie that you just don't like. And there are some people out there that if one film doesn't blow them away, they act like it's the end of the world, but that's just not me. The movies are absolutely the backbone of the universe. They're an entry point for most new fans, but having spent the past 5 years reading and watching every Star Wars story that's come out, they have become a little less make or break for me, where, if one just doesn't land for me, I'm like, oh well, it's just one part of this massive story, and it's okay if one isn't amazing. The Force Awakens is really the only movie of the bunch that blew me away. I remember walking out of that theater with nothing but enthusiasm, no criticisms, just feeling good about what I had just seen and what was to come for Star Wars. And since then, I have enjoyed every movie to varying degrees. For the most part, I like them, and even The Rise of Skywalker, where I'm still it's fresh enough that I'm working through issues, I'm able to accept it for what I did enjoy. And all 5 of these movies have delivered top-tier Star Wars moments, in my opinion. Finn and Poe escaping the Finalizer, Rey calling the saber to her hand for the first time, the entire Battle of Scarif and Vader's hallway scene on the Profundity, the Praetorian Guard fight, the Holdo maneuver, Luke's last stand against the First Order, the Kessel Run, and then Ben's redemption and everything he does afterwards, and Babu Frick, of course. To me, all of those moments make the stuff I didn't enjoy so much worth it. But one problem I did notice with The Rise of Skywalker and how it relates to the rest of Phase 1 of canon is that there were some minor contradictions. And I do think that that's got to be really challenging when you're dealing with a mixed media universe like Star Wars, but that also just comes with the territory. And this is all stuff that is almost borderline nitpicky, I think. Most people in the audience are not going to know that these issues exist at all. It's only for people like me, or probably you if you're watching this video, people who read the comics and the books. And I just think that if a storyteller wants to come in, write a Star Wars movie, they still have to respect the history that came before. And there were things like Zori Bliss telling Poe that he was a spice runner until he ran off and joined the Resistance. But the comics and the books have made it pretty clear he was with the New Republic Navy for a long time before he joined the Resistance. So that can be explained away just by saying that Zori was simplifying what she was saying. And yeah, you were a spice runner, now you're with the Resistance, and she just glazed over the New Republic part. But it doesn't really give off that feel. And I just get the sense that JJ wasn't spending time with the story group, and he was just going to go off and do his own thing, and he didn't really care what the books or comics had to say. And that doesn't really sit well with me. It's something that I'm just going to have to let go. Contradictions are going to happen in this universe, and there's really nothing that we can do about it now, but I hope that a lesson was learned and that filmmakers in the future really sit down with the story group and make sure that things line up. That Poe Zori thing is not the only thing in the movie that I noticed, but it's been said, Rian Johnson talked about how he met with the story group multiple times a week while he was making The Last Jedi, and I can really feel the difference in The Rise of Skywalker. What I think was the bigger problem in the sequel trilogy was just a lack of a plan. And this is something that I wanted to believe that there was an outline or a plan or something going into this trilogy, but again, The Rise of Skywalker just made it clear to me that there wasn't one. And I'm not saying it can't work. I mean, the original trilogy was not fully planned out from the start. You can see the changes being made in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But what it did have was this one unifying vision of George Lucas. He didn't write and direct all three films, but he was there. It was his story, and he was driving it forward. That doesn't seem to be the case with the sequel trilogy. The basic idea for the sequel trilogy was that JJ would kick everything off, Rian Johnson would build off of that, Colin Trevorrow would build off of that, but they were all allowed to do whatever they wanted and take what had been done and move in their own direction. JJ did say that he wrote some notes down. He's like, hey guys, I planted some seeds here. This is what I was thinking when I planted those seeds, like directions they could go, but you don't have to do that. Here are my notes. I'm done with Star Wars and I'm walking away. And then Colin Trevorrow gets let go, and JJ comes back in, and to me, it seems like he just went to those notes that he jotted down originally and was determined to make them happen. Sometimes he does build off of The Last Jedi, like the things with the Force Bond. I thought that was really well done. I loved all of that. But things like Rey Palpatine, that choice just no longer felt natural to me. So the two options I see for that are to either tell JJ he has to more closely stick to what has been established before, or plan the whole trilogy from the start. And that ship sailed years ago, so now JJ has just over 2 years to finish the Skywalker Saga. And I don't think there was much time to really fine-tune that script, and we wound up with a disjointed feeling trilogy. Like or love The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker, I think things would have felt a lot more satisfying if either JJ or Rian had been there to oversee the entire story, or have someone like Lawrence Kasdan write a treatment for all three films, like here are the basic plot points, and then you can pass that off to various writers and directors as long as there is like one clear direction, and we didn't get that. But I'm over here thinking, I didn't love the Rey Palpatine reveal in The Rise of Skywalker, but if that were the plan from the start, that all three directors knew that's what the end game was, I think it would have been a lot more satisfying. In my opinion, the MCU has changed filmmaking and especially audience expectations. People expect these big franchise stories to be planned out years in advance to know where things are headed, and I don't want Star Wars to follow an MCU model where we're getting like 3 or 4 movies every year. I think that's too much. But I do think that trilogies and big stories like this should be planned out ahead of time. And I've said before, The Last Jedi is not my favorite Star Wars movie, but I am excited about Rian Johnson's trilogy for that exact reason. I think that it's going to feel a lot more cohesive having him at the helm, or maybe not directing, but at least having like an oversight over all three films in his story. One other big thing I think will help the future of Star Wars movies is a removal from the Skywalker Saga. People have been invested in that story for over 40 years. It is an impossible task to write a conclusion to the Skywalker Saga that would please everybody. And there are so many comics and books and video games written in that era that it's hard not to contradict them sometimes. So I think that if we were to jump hundreds, thousands of years into the past or the future and explore new areas of the galaxy with new characters we can fall in love with, that's going to offer up a lot of creative freedom for storytellers. It'll be much harder to contradict things, and it'll be a lot harder for fans to say that their childhood was ruined because they have very little connection to everything else we've ever known. We will supposedly be learning more about the next Star Wars movie later this month, and my biggest hope for it is that it's something brand new. New characters, new era, new locations, just completely set apart from the Skywalker Saga. And if it's the start of a trilogy, I hope that trilogy is planned out beforehand, or at least has one person there to oversee the entire story. I think those two things will make a big difference. And it's kind of a bummer that episodes 7 and 8 and 9 wound up being like a testing ground for this new era of Star Wars. But Disney had just spent $4 billion, and the fastest way to get that investment back is to just dive into Episode 7 and all of that nostalgia. But in the end, it's fine. I'm still so grateful that these movies even exist. I mean, 10 years ago, I thought we were never ever going to see another Star Wars story on the big screen. Now we've got 5, and I'm talking about what can be done better in the future because more are coming. Even if there were some stumbles along the way, the sequel trilogy and Rogue One and Solo succeeded, in my opinion, a lot more often than they failed. I think there are just a couple little changes that can be made as we go into this new era of Star Wars storytelling, and I'm so excited to see what comes next. Let me know how you've felt about these last 5 years of Star Wars movies in the comments. Tomorrow I will be talking about the TV shows of Phase 1. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.